أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام را. تلك آيات الكتاب الحكيم. أكان للناس عجبا أن أوحينا إلى رجل منهم أن أنذر الناس وبشر الذين آمنوا أن لهم قدم صدق عند ربهم. قال الكافرون إن هذا لساحر مبين. إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يدبر الأمر ما من شفيع إلا من بعد إذنه. ذلكم الله ربكم فاعبدوه أفلا تذكرون. إليه مرجعكم جميعا وعد الله حقا إنه يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده ليجزي الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات بالقسط والذين كفروا لهم شراب من حميم وعذاب أليم بما كانوا يكفرون. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب. ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق يفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. إن في اختلاف الليل والنهار وما خلق الله في السماوات والأرض لآية لقوم يتقون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل لا سيما أولهم مولانا أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم مولانا الإمام الثاني عشر المهدي المنتظر عجل الله تعالى فرجه ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. I apologize again to the elders that I am sitting here and speaking as it was. Allah يسلمكم. السلام عليكم. The discussion that we started a couple of nights ago was from a narration of Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam, in which Imam describes the impact that different sins have on us. We had the tawfiq earlier to hear Dua Kumail, and we all remember that part from Dua Kumail. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah alayhi starts by saying, Allahumma ghfir li al-dhunuba allati, this, that. Each category is mentioned, whether they are tughayyirun na'am, whether they are tunzilun niqam. All the different groups are mentioned. In this narration, which I highly recommend everyone to go and read it in your own time, Imam alayhi salam talks about each one of those categories and what sins are included in them. There is about 13 categories that are mentioned in there, and each together across all, Imam alayhi salam mentions about 70 or so sins across all of those 13 categories. Very, very useful and very beneficial. How is it beneficial? The discussion that we had yesterday was that when you look at these things, one, we can assess ourselves. When Imam alayhi salam says, وَالذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تُغَيِّرُ النَّعَمِ, one of them is, for example, tarku shukr. Then I realize, if I see in my own life, and as I've said it over and over, only and only and only in my own life, nobody else's, not even the closest person to me, purely something personal. I look at myself and I see, oh, something has changed. Could it be to do with the fact that I have done that mistake? So it gives you a higher level of awareness, much better than, it's like a doctor, for example, who is well aware of different symptoms of different illnesses. That person who's got the awareness of the symptoms is much more likely to be cured and not to fall into the trap of an illness, for example, months and months later. You know, sometimes people say, oh yes, this was diagnosed, but it was diagnosed too late. If only it had been diagnosed a little bit earlier, a few months earlier, that person would have been cured or had much higher chance of being cured. Whereas now it is too late. This awareness is one major point from the narration of Imam Zainul Abidin salawatullah. That's why I think it is very, very useful for any one of us to go through and read that, and almost sitting in front of Imam alayhi salatu wassalam and saying, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, tell me about these things. The way you read the narrations, sometimes I sort of put myself in that situation. We have these books of Amali. I don't remember whether this was also in the Amali or not. But Amali are basically books in which the ulama, in the same way that we've got lectures, those lectures in the old days, this is at the time of Saduq rahmatullah alayh, Shaykh Tusi rahmatullah alayh, those times, what they had, the Majlis would be there, and because all of them have got dates, if you look at Amali at the moment, you see it says Majlis, the date of the Majlis is this, and then all the Shaykh would recite this narration. word for word, and people would write it down. This is a majlis on its own, reading the whole of the narration of Imam alayhi salatu wassalam and people listening to it. So it's a side point. But when you are reading it, put yourself in the presence of Imam alayhi salam, and inshallah we seek the guidance and we seek the benefit from those. The other thing that we mentioned yesterday, and inshallah we want to sort of continue with that tradition for the second day, is we said, why don't we also use this majlis as a starter to read some of the munajat of Imam Zainul Abidin salawatullah alayh. Yesterday we had the tawfiq of reading the very first munajat, and inshallah today we spend in the discussion down now, inshallah. All of you have got your phones, and you can use those. And if you type in whether the munajat by Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, you can find it. We recite that, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, most people I can see here know Arabic much better than I do. And those who don't, inshallah, use the translation along with it to benefit more from it. We recite that, and then we go back to the discussion of the narration of Imam Zainul Abidin salawatullah alayh. Oh. The second one of the munajat is called Munajatul Shakin. So from the 15 munajat of Imam Zainul Abidin salawatullah alayh in Mafatih, before the a'mal of the month starts, before the a'mal of the month of Rajab starts, you will see all of those munajat, and again in other places you can find it. Inshallah, we'll read that together. It only takes a few minutes, and then we'll come back to our discussion. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إلهي إليك أشكو نفسا بالسوء أمارة، وإلى الخطيئة مبادرة، وبمعاصيك مولعة، ولسخطك متعرضة، تسلك بي مسالك المهالك، وتجعلني عندك أهون هالك. كثيرة العلل طويلة الأمل، إن مسها الشر تجزع، وإن مسها الخير تمنع. ميالة إلى اللعب واللهو، مملوة بالغفلة والسهو، تسرع بي إلى الحوبة، وتسوفني بالتوبة. إلهي أشكو إليك عدوا يذلني، وشيطانا يغويني، قد ملأ بالوسواس صدري، وأحاطت هواجسه بقلبي. يعاضدني الهوى، ويزين لي حب الدنيا، ويحول بيني وبين الطاعة والزلفى. إلهي إليك أشكو قلبا قاسيا مع الوسواس متقلبا، وبالرين والطبع متلبسا، وعينا عن البكاء من خوفك جامدا، وإلى ما تسرها طامحا. إلهي لا حول لي ولا قوة إلا بقدرتك، ولا نجاة لي من مكاره الدنيا إلا بعصمتك. فأسألك ببلاغة حكمتك ونفاذ مشيتك أن لا تجعلني لغير جودك متعرضا، ولا تصيرني للفتن غرضا، وكن لي على الأعداء ناصرا، وعلى المخازي والعيوب ساترا، ومن البلاء واقيا، وعن المعاصي عاصما برأفتك ورحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات reading these munajat after, especially or within the discussions that we're talking about the dhunub and the sins and the impact that those have, keeps that balance. Because I think without it, as we have in some of the narrations, if I purely look at the sins and the impact of those sins that have on me, I may fall into the trap of losing hope. Whereas we know at the same time that all of those for me may be very, very grave. On the other side of it, I have a Lord whose mercy is far greater than any wrong than anyone could ever do. The first group of the sins that Imam alayhi salam mentioned, and I read from the narration itself, are الذنوب التي تغير النعم, in which Imam very quickly say it: البغي على الناس والزوال عن العادة في الخير والصناع المعروف وكفران النعم وترك الشكر. These are the five that are mentioned there. Injustice to people, dropping something good that you used to do. You know, a good deed or a good habit that you have, dropping that good habit would have an impact. And then istina'ul ma'roof is dropping a good deed or amr bil ma'roof itself. And kufranun na'am, that all of us understand sort of the meaning of the word. We discussed this yesterday. And not thanking Allah or doing the shukr for the favors that He has given us. The second group, وَالذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تُورِثُ النَّدَمِ, the sins that would result in regret, nadama. The title itself is quite moving, right? Because when we all have an understanding of the sense of regret. When you do something and you have a great regret afterwards. And when you so put that in that context, and it gives you why, or you at least have an understanding of why some of these may be in that particular category. That regret could be for anything that any of us have experienced. I remember when after I go into a little bit of sort of my field or some of the other people's fields, when Google started its shares and it did its IPO, so lots of people went and they bought Google shares. I was one of those people. So alongside with the other stuff that we were doing, we bought the Google shares. The Google shares at the time, I don't remember how much it was exactly, call it $100 for example. And let's say I bought, I don't know, $10,000. A year later, we sort of got tired or whatever it was, for whatever reason, we sold it. Now, looking back, after some years, that's back in, well, I don't remember when it was, maybe 2004, I think, 2005, around that time. So 16 years later, or 17 years later, when I look at it, that is a big regret, right? Because with that money, probably that small amount of investment, I could have probably bought a house right now. It's a very simple, worldly, easy example that we see. Now, take that bit of regret that you look at and imagine if that was my whole investment that I had in my life. Everything. All my income, all my household income that I had, everything was put in there. And imagine that not that I got it out with maybe 10-20% profit. No, I'd lost it all. That regret would be multiplied many times. Right? It would be far, far bigger than that sort of first example that we mentioned. And imagine if you had gone through your life and you have completely gone the wrong way. You look back at your life, close to the time of your death, for example. Imagine somebody on his deathbed thinking back, looking at the life and seeing, actually, you know what? Everything that I have done, I've done the opposite of what I should have done. Right? Many people have that sense. I remember my examples unfortunately come from my field most of the time. One of the major people in banking once had an interview and he was talking about it at the old age, so after retirement. And his biggest regret was the fact that he thought at the time earning all of this money would bring him a lot of happiness, whereas the loss that he had with not seeing his children was far, far greater than that. And if he was to go back now, he would have wanted to change that. But time's gone. And none of that you can bring back. This is regret. Now, there are things that in the small scale people might call regret, and you tell them, you know what, grow up, don't worry. You know, certain things, Salaam alaikum, certain things that are not much worthy of regret. That Google share, whether I had X% more or this much more or less, doesn't make that much of a difference, right? If I say that to one of you, you would tell me that, don't worry, if that was your rizq, it would have come some other way. You did the best you could and you got it. But there are certain things that you cannot bring back, and the loss that you have creates a nadama and a regret that is far, far great. Imam alayhi salam gives you the example. The first one, inshallah, not relevant for any one of us, is قَتْلُ النَّفْسِ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ. Killing someone. Killing someone is one of those actions that would bring a lot of regret. وَتَرْكُ صِلَةِ الْقَرَابَ حَتَّى يَسْتَغْنَوْا. The Sile Arham, taking care of those families. Sile is not just visiting them. Sometimes we translate it in Farsi as visiting family. Visiting is part of it, but it is about, Salatul Arham is about taking care of the family. If I've got a cousin, if I've got a family who is in need of something, do I look after them or not when I can? With whatever ways that are possible. If I don't do it, there will come a time that I will regret that. I want to read as many as I can, so I won't spend a lot of time. I will read the wordings of Imam alayhi salam and translate. The third one, وَتَرْكُ الصَّلَاةَ حَتَّى يَخْرُجَ وَقْتَهَا. Not doing your prayers until the time is past. Doing them within the time. It's interesting, when I was reading, I think the only one, I haven't double checked, but I do have I've created a table with all of this to sort of structure it in my head. The only one that is repeated more than once is about the salat. You will see later on in another one of them, salat is also mentioned again. It's particularly with Isha and with the Salatul Fajr. The Tarkus Salat is one of those that you will regret as a result of it. It's one of those things that you wish you had corrected it at that time. وَتَرْكُ الْوَصِيَّةِ. Forgetting or not doing your wasiyah, the will that you have to do, we all have to do. وَرَدُّ الْمَظَالِمِ. رَدَّ مَظَالِمِ. Anything, the sort of paying the dues that you have, and the charities with regards to things that you are not aware of and you may have done some wrong, or from the income that you have, putting some of that aside for the charity. وَمَنْعُ الزَّكَاةَ حَتَّى يَحْضُرَ الْمَوْتِ وَيَنْغَلِقُ اللِّسَانِ. So leaving zakat. Zakat is any form of zakat, including khums. So for most of us, the other types of zakat are not that relevant, but khums is a form of zakat. The overall category is zakat, and then you have a zakat for different holdings that you may have. One of them is the income that you have, and khums becomes one category. It is so important that although it is a part of it, sometimes it is put right next to it. Qismu shay becomes qasimu shay, as sometimes they put it. So it becomes another category in that in those conversations. These are the ones. Recite aloud salawat. Apologies for the coughs. The third category, وَالذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تُنْزِلُ النِّقَمِ. There are sins that bring the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, certain things that if you do, even in this world, you will see the ni'mah as a result of that. What are those? عصيان العارف بالبغي والتطاول على الناس والاستهزاء بهم والسخرية منهم. The committing a sin or disobedience of someone who is aware. When you're aware of something, and you intentionally disobey that, the truth that has been made known to you, the right that has been made known to you, and you intentionally, purposefully you do that, you go against it. That's one. The other three, as you can see them, the other three are all about the way that we behave other people. Whether we mock them, we make fun of those people, we disrespect them, we consider them low and myself high. These are the things that Allah in this world will show me that this was not my place. You know, even in this world, I'll probably see the impact of that. The wrath of Allah will come to that person. The next group, وَالذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تَدْفَعُ الْقِسَمِ. The qismah, that the rizq, for example, that you have, these are the sins that would result in a reduction of that. It would push that away. There was something that was supposed to come to me as a result of that sin. This one is pushed away. And again, we sometimes forget the impact of the actions are not purely the impact, the physical impact that you and I may see. We are, despite all of the advances in science, most of the time I think people in this day and age have actually become narrow-minded in that sense. You know, the person, I don't know, even 100 years ago could not have thought of the fact that you can click a button, you put a bowl of food inside something, you click a button, no heat, nothing is generated anywhere, and yet the food becomes very, very hot as a result of something. You know, things that we don't necessarily see are the impact of the actions that we have. Those impacts do not necessarily need to be the immediate physical impact that you and I see as a result. So these are some aspects of that we have to be careful that when Imam alayhi salam is mentioning these, I don't necessarily understand how that links to that and how that would impact it. Imam alayhi salam is saying, doesn't matter whether you know it or not, this will have that impact, beware of it. What are those? إظهار الافتقار. Acting that you are, or showing that you are poor. You have financial difficulty, for example. You know, one of the bad habits that sometimes people have is when you talk to them about their wealth, for example, or the wealth in general, they usually want to be very, very modest about it. I'm not saying to brag. Assalamu rahmatullah. I'm not saying to brag about those. However, iftiqar, someone can help me with a sort of a better translation of it, is showing off as if you are poor. You know, that probably the best way to sort of maybe describe it. Showing off as if you're poor. That's one of those things that will result in what? Will result in pushing away your rizq. The other one, وَالنَّوْمْ عَنِ الْعَتَمَةِ وَعَنْ صَلَاةِ الْغَدَاتِ. The sleeping during the time of your Isha prayers and your morning prayers, your Fajr, for your Fajr prayers. Again, as I said, this is another impact of sort of missing the prayers. وَاسْتِحْقَارُ النَّعَمِ. Considering the ni'amat as very little. All the ni'amat, all the favors that Allah have given them, those ones to consider them as very little. وَشَكْوَى الْمَعْبُودِ عَزَّ وَجَلَ. complaining to Allah, but complaining to Allah about Allah. Sometimes people complain, and when they are put in a calamity, they think, oh, this calamity, why Allah, why have you put me in this calamity? That language and that mindset is a mindset that is counterintuitive, right? It results in the exact opposite, and I'm completely unaware of it. So if you don't want it to happen, if you don't want this to happen, if you want your rizq to come to you fully, avoid all of these things. وَالذُّنُوبُ الَّتِي تَهْتِكُ الْعِسَامِ. The sins or the wrongs that people do that will destroy, I call it sort of the ropes that you have that will protect you. Again, with an analogy, imagine you're going up the mountain, or these climbing exercises that people do. You have a number of ropes that are holding you there, right? Those are the ones that you're hanging on to, right? Those are the ones you're hanging on to. The stronger those are, the more protected you feel. If you start, let's say 4 or 5 or 6 of them, imagine these bungee jumping or similar to those that they do in the shopping centers. They've got a number of ropes, right? Imagine if you start to cut off some of these ones. Every time you cut one off, this becomes less and less safe, until the point that you are in serious danger and you will be destroyed as a result of it. Tahtikul isam is that, because it's the isma that you have, it's that protection that you have. The word isma, we all understand it. The son of Prophet Nuh, ala nabiyana wa alayhi salam, said that I'm going up the mountain, ya'samuni min al-ma. He was going for the protection from that. If that protection is destroyed, obviously that wasn't a protection for him, but if that protection was to be destroyed, then everything will be destroyed. What are those? Shurb al-khamr, al-ayadhu billah. Alhamdulillah, it's not something that would affect us. Drinking. Wal-la'ib bil-qimar. Gambling is another one of those. These are the ones that would do tahtikul isam. وتعاطي ما يضحك الناس من اللغو والمزاح. This is excessive, clowning, being like a clown, making fun all the time. Definitely mu'min, part of the acts that mu'min does is bringing happiness to others. Today we don't have the time, and it's probably not the place. Inshallah, if there was a program for what comes after Safar, inshallah, if we were together, I'll tell you some of those that we even have from Ayyam, that they are not people who are always angry and sad and all of those. No. Laughter, even jokes, are things that are part of the good deeds that people do. But when it becomes an excessive thing, the person becomes like a clown, it's one of those that would tahtikul isam. وذكر عيوب الناس ومجالسة أهل الريب. So keep repeating people's mistakes and showing people's weaknesses, all of those, and sitting with those who've got the doubts in their hearts. Making sure I choose the right person to be my friend at whatever age. I don't think that really matters. Whether it is at the age of 10 or it is at the age of 40 or probably even older. Sitting with those people would have an impact over time on us. We have many, many narrations about that. You look at books of psychology, there are many, many discussions on those as well. And it is one of those that in this day and age, unfortunately, it's not valued as much. Who do I sit with? Who do I become friend with? People think the more of a free thinker I am, the better it is. I should talk to everyone. I should hear from everyone. Is it really that important to have to hear everyone's thinking and be sort of close to every single person with every single mindset? No. I sometimes refer to, again, a study that has been done, and you can look it up. look, you can look it up, that they say something along this, that you earn, this was a study that was done, that they say everyone will earn within 5% of their 5 closest friends. So over time, whoever your 5 closest friends are, you are very, very likely to have an income very close to them. And other attributes. They've done this study on income, and then they also say about the other attributes that people have. So whoever becomes my friend, the one that I keep going to, becomes the one who affects my behavior and everything else that comes with it. So if that is the case, then I should be very wise in choosing the right people for my company. If I want to do that, I need to make sure that, okay, I want to choose the one who has these attributes and these values to a company. Inshallah, the rest of the narration, I will leave it for everyone. You can look at the book of Ma'an al-Akhbar. And inshallah, you will read it, and we will all inshallah benefit from this. It's the last night of the Majlis, and I thought as a start, inshallah, before our brother does the beautiful recitations, I want to go to our mother, Lady Fatima Salamullah alayha, in the last night of almost every Majlis. Because the masa'ib that have happened afterwards are all the fruits of what was planted at that time and in Saqifa. Majlisi rahmatullah alayh mentions, and he says that someone in Mecca has given him this book that he's writing this narration from. I go very quickly over that. The narration gets to Sa'id ibn Musayyib, who is one of the companions, one of the very close companions of Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam, that this majlis is for. لما قتل الحسين بن علي صلوات الله عليهما وورد نعيه إلى المدينة. At the time when Imam Hussein alayhi salam was martyred, the family was brought into Medina. Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab's son, saw what they had done to the family of Imam Hussein. He goes to Sham to Yazid. He goes to Sham to Yazid to complain. The brutality was so much that even someone like Abdullah ibn Umar actually complains, and he gets really angry. He goes in, the narration is long. He goes in and he has a conversation with Yazid, and he says, what is this that you have done? This is definitely not the way that anyone would have done anything to even a non-Muslim. How could you have ever done that to the grandson of the Prophet? Not that he loves the grandson of the Prophet. It's just the brutality seems so much to him. He says, really? He says, do you know your own father's handwriting? He says, yes. He goes and he brings a letter. This is the letter that Umar ibn al-Khattab writes to Muawiyah at the time. In this letter, he mentions what he has done. So if you wanted to know firsthand what happened to Lady Fatima salamullah alayha, from which they copied the event of Karbala, see, Yazid is saying, if I've done that, it is based on the will that your father has given my father. I have followed that. I followed that word for word. What you have done in there, I've done it in the battle of Karbala. I only read a few parts of that, and inshallah our brother will continue. He goes on to say that we went and we saw Amir al-Mu'mineen. They didn't open the door, and فضربت فاطمة يديها من الباب تمنعني من فتحه. Lady Fatima was holding the door not to let me to come. فرمته فتسعب علي فضربت كفيها بالصوت فألمها فسمعت لها زفيرا وبكاء فكدت أن ألين وأنقلب عن الباب. He says, when I heard the scream of Lady Fatima after I hit the door, I was taken aback and I wanted to go. Then I remembered, فَذَكَرْتُ, and then I remembered the things that this man and his cousin, the Prophet ﷺ, has done previously to those that we loved and to the people of the people at that time. And I remembered the Kaidah, the Prophet, وَسِحْرِهِ. فركلت الباب وقد ألصقت أحشاءها بالباب تترسه. I hit the door so much that she was basically stuck between the door and the wall, until it gets to the point that she calls upon, she says, Ya Abata, Ya Rasul Allah, هكذا كان يفعل بحبيبتك وابنتك يا فضة إليك فخذيني فقد والله قتل ما في أحشائي. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين فسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون.
صلوات. When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, oh mother, they've killed my brother. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. When the night fell on that desert camping, a lonely voice was heard in morning. Then she looked and saw someone approaching, one who would join her in her grieving. She had come to see her progeny and what had become of their destiny. But she could not let her go closer. She did not want her to really see. Body with no head, 72 dead. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. When Fatima came to Karbala, Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, oh mother, my brother. Zainab said, do not. Before you were born, my loving daughter, I was shown this by your grandfather. He told me what was to be for my son and how it would be a tragedy. My brother told me of this day as well. I knew what was to become of me. But even then I could not stand witness when I saw Shimmer walking to him. Arrow in his heart, river ripped apart. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. And Fatima came to Karbala. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Go back, oh mother, killed my brother. Zainab said, do not look, Ya Zahra. Salawat.
أحسنت حبيبي، أحسنت، والله أنفاس. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم وأمنا من لجأ إليكم سادتي. لاله سرخ شهادت تن تبدار من است، چشمه فیض خدا چشم گوهر بار من است. حافظ خون و پیام شهدای ره دین، لب گویای من و دیده خون بار من است. داغ یک دشت شهید و غم یک دشت اسیر، این همه بار گران بر تن بیمار من است. آن که در کرب و بلا بود انیس پدرم، در ره شام بلا مونس و غم خوار من است. در کنار شهدا جان مرا باز خرید، امم بعد خداوند نگهدار من است. خواهر کوچک من همچو گلی پرپر شد، اشک طفلان ز غمش شب شب تار من است. امشب متوسل بشیم به نازدانه ابی عبدالله. آقا امام سجاد فرمودند ما را در خیمه‌ای در خرابه‌ای قرار دادند که روزها از شدت گرما و شبها از شدت سرما قابل تحمل نبود. در آن خرابه خوابیدن چطور ممکن است؟ به هر حال یکی از بچه ها از خستگی و راه و گریه و فراوان به خواب رفت. آقا ابا عبدالله را در خواب می‌بیند نازدانه حسین، میگه بابا سر تو را به طبق تا که دیدم ای بابا، زدیدن سرت از جا پریدم ای بابا. پس از شهادت تو ای شهید راه خدا، به روی خار مغیلان دویدم ای بابا. ز بس که ظلم و ستم دیدم ز مردم شام، به کودکی ز جهان دل بریدم ای بابا. گفت بابا به یاد مادر پهلو شکسته افتادم، چو طعم ضربت سیلی چشیدم ای بابا. در نام رقیه فاطمه پنهان است، از این دو یکی جان و یکی جانان است. در روی کبود این دو پیداست خدا، آیین بزرگ و کوچکش یکسان است. یا والله ضیم، یا والله ضیم، أنا صير من صغري يتيم، والناح من بعدك لجيم، أثار الأبو يا ناس خيمة يفي على بناته وحريمه، يفي على بناته وحريمه. لا تسأل عن عذابه وغربته، لا تسأل ليش تهمل دمعته، لا تسأل عن عذابه وغربته، لا تسأل ليش تهمل دمعته. فاقد أهله لا تسأله لا تسأله فاقد أهله فاقد أهله لا تسأله لا تسأله علي السجاد خلى يعيش بهمومه لا تلومه على نوحه أبد لا تلومه ذبحة والده بعيونه مرسومه ودخان المخيم لسه بهدومه لا تلومه دمعه يجرح بالجفين لا تلومه خل يموت من الحزين فاقد أهله لا تسأله لا تسأله فاقد أهله فاقد لا تسأله لا تسأله أصور لك بعض من حزنه وأهواله شاف حسين أبوه وشاف جتاله لما انقطع راس على الرمح شاله سحقت فوق صدره 10 خياله والله صعبة الوحدة وبديرة غروب والله صعبة بصوت لما ينضرب والله صعبة الوحدة وبديرة غروب والله صعبة بصوت لما ينضرب ما هي سهلة لا تسأله لا تسأله فاقد أهله فاقده لا تسأله لا تسأله يا ضمي اليفت صمي الصخر طمم جاهل الليل وعياله بلا خيمه نص الليل ذاك ضاعت يتيمه من يطلع يدور طفله بالهيمه والغرابة وهذا أعظم كل جريح والغرابة طول زينب ينلمح والغرابة وهذا أعظم كل جريح والغرابة طول زينب ينلمح نوحه يعلم لا تسأله لا تسأله فاقد أهله فاقده لا تسأله اللي شاف بعينه مو مثل اللي يعيش إحساس قبال عيونه زينب تنضرب يا ناس بينه وبين روحه يعاتب العباس كل ما تبكي عمته يلتفت عالراس يا ابو فاضل كلمة عتاب وألم يا ابو فاضل وين سيفك والعلم يا ابو فاضل كلمة عتاب وألم يا ابو فاضل وين سيفك والعلم وش يقول له لا تسأله لا تسأله فاقد أهله فاقده لا تسئ لا تسئ اي طبيب درد مندان یا حسین ای طبیب درد مندان یا حسین ای انیس مستمندان یا حسین یا حبیبی یا حسین نور عین حسین یا حبیبی یا حسین نور عین ای تو هم مقصود و هم مطلوب ما ای ولایت دین و ایمان یا حسین ای لبت آب بقا را آب روح از چه گشتی کشته عطسان حسین یا حبیب نور عین حسین چهره ات مرآت ذات کبریا حق عیان زان روی تابان یا حسین سنگ کین آمد چه بر پیشانیت منکشف شد شمس رخشان یا حسین یا حبیب حسین نور عین حسین یا حبیبی یا حسین نور عین حسین یا حبیبی یا حسین نور عین حسینا و حسینا و حسینا حسینا و غریبا و غریبا و غریبا شهیدا و شهیدا و شهیدا حسین عطشانا وعطشانا وعطشانا حسين 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 غريب كربلاء إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم تقبل منا هذا القليل بأحسن قبولك يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج، دعاء الفرج. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اقض حوائج المحتاجين. اللهم شافي وعافي جميع المرضى، على الخصوص مرضى المنظورين ومن أوصانا بالدعاء. اللهم اكشف الغمة عن هذه الأمة بحضور الحجة. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات وللمسلمين وللمسلمات على الخصوص على روح أموات الحاضرين وصاحب الدار. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة قبلها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًّا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًّا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.